How does a 400-year-old Japanese garden stay completely weed-free without a single bottle of Roundup ever touching the soil? No spraying, no kneeling for hours with a trowel, no $200 a year subscription to a lawn chemical service. And yet walk through a temple courtyard in Kyoto or past a private home in a quiet Japanese suburb, and the gravel path is clean, the flower beds are clean, the driveway cracks are clean, and they've been clean for decades. Meanwhile, you've probably tried everything. The spray from the hardware store that worked for 2 weeks and then stopped working at all. The weekend you spent on your knees pulling weeds by hand, only to watch them come back twice as thick a month later. Vinegar from a TikTok video that did basically nothing. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Almost everything you've been taught about killing weeds is backwards. You've been taught to fight the weed. The Japanese method doesn't fight the weed at all. It removes the one thing every weed needs to exist in the first place. And once that's gone, the weed simply has nowhere left to grow. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. The two-part system Japanese households have used for centuries to keep gravel paths, driveways, garden beds, and lawn edges permanently weed-free. First, how to deal with the weeds you already have right now, using nothing but what's probably already in your kitchen. Then, the part that actually matters long-term, how to set your yard up so new weeds physically cannot grow back, ever. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the bottle of weed killer in your garage was never going to solve this, and what to do instead. Let's get into it. The real problem. Quick word before we get into the methods, because I want to name something clearly. Almost every commercial weed killer on the market works the same broken way. It kills the visible green part of the plant. It does almost nothing to the root system underneath, and it does nothing at all to stop the next seed from germinating in that same spot next month. That's why you spray, the weed dies, you feel like you won, and 6 weeks later there's a new one in the exact same crack. You're not failing at this. The product was never designed to solve the actual problem. It was designed to sell you another bottle. In Japan, there's a word for the daily practice of tending a space before it becomes a problem. Soji. It's usually translated as cleaning, but it really means something closer to maintaining order continuously, in small amounts, so nothing ever gets out of hand. You see it in Japanese schools, where children sweep their own classroom floors every single day after lunch. You see it in temple courtyards, where the gravel is raked every morning before the sun is even up. Apply that same idea to a weed, and the whole picture changes. A weed that's caught the size of your fingernail is a 1-second job. The same weed left for a month is a 10-minute fight with a root that snaps in your hand. Left for a whole season, it's the chemical problem you're dealing with right now. So we're going to split this into 2 halves. First, removing what's already growing. Fast, with things you already own. Second, and this is the half that actually matters, setting up your yard so this never becomes a recurring chore again. Quick comment question before we keep going. What have you actually been spraying on your weeds this year, and did it work for more than a month? Drop it below. I want to see how many of you have tried the same 3 products I'm about to walk through. Module 1. Driveway and pavement cracks. The boiling water method. Let's start with the most common complaint. Weeds pushing up through cracks in your driveway, patio, or walkway. The cause? These cracks trap a small amount of soil, moisture, and warmth, basically a tiny greenhouse, and seeds blow in constantly. There's no way to stop seeds from landing there. What you can control is whether they survive contact. The method: fill a kettle with plain tap water, bring it to a full rolling boil, and carry it out to the crack. Pour it slowly and directly onto the base of the weed, where the stem meets the surface, not just over the leaves. Water at boiling temperature ruptures plant cell walls almost instantly. Within a few hours, the leaves go limp. Within a day or 2, the whole thing is brown and crisp. Here's what most of the quick life hack videos leave out though, and it matters. Boiling water is a contact treatment. It only kills what it physically touches. On a young weed, the little seedlings you catch early in spring, that's enough, because the root system underneath hasn't developed yet. But on an older, established weed with a real taproot, like dandelion, bindweed, or thistle, the root usually survives underground and pushes up a new shoot within a couple of weeks. So be honest with yourself about what this does. It is a maintenance tool you repeat, not a miracle you do once. Expect to treat stubborn perennial weeds every 2 to 3 weeks through the growing season. Eventually, after enough rounds where the leaves never get the chance to photosynthesize, the root runs out of stored energy and gives up for good. Why this beats salt, which is the other natural method you've probably seen recommended. Salt does kill weeds, but it doesn't stay where you put it. Rain washes it sideways into the surrounding soil, where it accumulates and can poison that ground for years, for any plant, not just the weed. If there's a lawn, a flower bed, or a tree anywhere near that crack, salt can quietly damage all of it, without you realizing why nothing grows there next spring. Boiling water has none of that risk. It just evaporates. Honestly, skip the salt entirely. Cost: a kettle of tap water is free. $0 per treatment. The biggest mistake people make with this method is using lukewarm or barely hot water because they didn't want to wait for a full boil. At anything under boiling, the plant just gets a bit of stress and recovers within days. You need the full rolling boil, poured immediately while it's still steaming, for the cell rupture to actually happen. Module 2. Tough, established weeds. Horticultural vinegar. For the cases where boiling water alone isn't cutting it, a thistle that keeps coming back, bindweed that's clearly more established than a quick pour can handle, there's a stronger option, but it comes with a real safety warning attached. Horticultural vinegar is not the 5% white vinegar sitting in your kitchen cabinet. That's fine for cooking, and it'll knock back a tiny seedling on a hot day, but it does almost nothing to an established plant. Horticultural vinegar is sold at a concentration of 20 to 30% acetic acid, roughly 5 to 6 times stronger than what's in your pantry. At that strength, it actually burns through the waxy outer coating on a leaf and destroys the plant tissue underneath. Here's the trade-off, and I want to be direct about it. At that concentration, this stuff is genuinely dangerous to handle carelessly. It can burn your skin on contact and cause real damage if it splashes in your eyes. Gloves and eye protection are not optional here. Keep it away from kids and pets while you're applying it, and apply it on a still day with a small, precise sprayer, not a wide spray bottle, so it doesn't drift onto anything you actually want to keep alive. And that's the other critical thing to understand. Both boiling water and horticultural vinegar are non-selective. They cannot tell the difference between a dandelion and your prize rose bush. They will scorch whatever they touch. That means these methods belong in driveway cracks, gravel paths, and bare patches of ground, not as a quick spray inside a flower bed where wanted plants are growing right next to the weed. For weeds growing in among your actual plants, hand pulling is still genuinely your best option, and we'll get to the right way to do that in a moment. Cost: a bottle of horticultural vinegar runs roughly the same as a bottle of glass cleaner and lasts most of a season if you're only spot treating. Biggest mistake: spraying on a windy day. Acetic acid at this strength drifts further than people expect, and a gust at the wrong moment can damage a flower bed 10 feet away that you weren't even aiming for. Wait for a still afternoon. Module 3. Weeds growing among your plants. The Kusamushiri method. Now for the weeds growing right next to the plants you actually want. Inside flower beds, vegetable rows, anywhere you can't just blast it with boiling water or vinegar without taking out everything around it. This is where the Japanese approach to hand weeding comes in, and it's called kusamushiri, which roughly translates to grass plucking, the deliberate, attentive practice of removing weeds by hand while they're still small. The method itself is almost insultingly simple, but the timing is everything. Wait until the day after a good rain, when the soil is soft and loose, not dry and compacted. Bend down, grip the weed at the very base, right where the stem meets the soil, not higher up on the leaves, and pull slowly and steadily straight up. Done correctly, the entire root lifts out cleanly in one piece. If you yank quickly, or try to pull from dry, hard soil, the top snaps off and the root stays buried, which means you'll see a new shoot from that exact spot within a week. That single detail, soft soil, slow steady pull, grip at the base, is the difference between this taking 5 minutes and this taking your entire Saturday. Here's the mindset shift this method actually teaches, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Done consistently, a few minutes every few days, this job basically never becomes a chore. Left until August when everything's overgrown and you finally decide to deal with it, it becomes a brutal weekend battle where half the roots snap off anyway because the ground's gone hard and dry. The Japanese approach isn't really about technique here, it's about frequency. Small and often beats rare and intense, every single time. Cost: free. 5 minutes, a few times a week. Biggest mistake? Treating this as a once-a-season chore instead of a standing habit. The entire advantage of kusamushiri disappears if you let weeds get established before you start pulling. The contrarian turn. Why all of this is still just maintenance. Now here's the part that actually deserves the word Japanese, and the part that turns this from a list of tricks into a permanent solution. Everything I've covered so far, the boiling water, the vinegar, the hand pulling, is reactive. It deals with weeds that already exist. And if that's all you ever do, you'll be doing this forever, because new seeds are blowing into your yard constantly whether you like it or not. The real shift, the one that actually ends this cycle, is preventing weeds from ever germinating in the first place. And the principle behind it is the same one running through everything in this niche. You don't fight the plant, you remove the one condition it needs to exist. For a weed seed, that condition is light. No light reaching the soil, no germination. That's it. That single fact is the entire foundation of everything we're about to cover. Module 4. Driveways, gravel paths, and bare ground, the barrier method. Walk through almost any traditional Japanese garden, any tidy gravel driveway, any temple courtyard, and underneath the surface, you'll find the same setup nearly every time. Beneath the gravel sits a layer of tightly woven landscape fabric. In Japan, it's called a boso sheet, which literally translates to weed prevention sheet. It's a permeable material. Water drains straight through it, but light cannot pass through it at all. No light reaching the soil below means nothing down there can germinate, no matter how many seeds land on the surface above. You can find an equivalent at any garden center under the name landscape fabric or weed barrier fabric. The installation, step by step. First, clear the target area down to bare soil. Pull anything currently growing there. Second, lay the fabric across the entire surface, overlapping each seam by a few inches so there are no gaps for light to sneak through. Third, pin it down securely with landscape staples every couple of feet. Fourth, spread your gravel, decorative stone, or bark chips on top, to a depth of 2 to 3 inches. That top layer does double duty. It holds the fabric flat and protects it from sun damage, and it gives the whole area a clean, finished look. Done properly, a setup like this can stay weed-free for 10 years or more, with essentially no maintenance beyond the occasional stray seed that lands directly on top of the gravel and tries to root in the dust between stones, and those pull out in a second since there's no real soil for them to anchor into. Cost. A roll of landscape fabric for an average driveway edge or gravel path runs $30 to $50, a one-time cost that lasts a decade. Biggest mistake, skipping the overlap on the seams to save fabric. Even a half-inch gap where two pieces meet is enough for light to reach the soil, and that's exactly where your next weed problem will start, right along that seam line. Module 5. Flower beds and vegetable beds, the mulch method. For flower beds and vegetable rows, the fabric approach actually works against you. It blocks your real plants from spreading naturally and makes it harder for earthworms to do the work that keeps your soil alive. So here the method shifts to mulch. A thick layer of bark chips, wood chips, or composted material, spread 2 to 3 inches deep across the entire surface of the bed, does the exact same light-blocking job the fabric does underground, just without smothering the soil ecosystem. Weed seeds sitting under that layer simply never get the light signal to germinate. As a bonus, that same mulch layer holds moisture in the soil beneath it, which means less watering through the hot months, and it slowly breaks down over a year and feeds the soil as it goes. You refresh it once annually, and that's the entire maintenance routine for that bed. The other Japanese technique worth mentioning here is ground cover. Instead of leaving bare soil between your established plants, which is basically an open invitation for weeds, you fill that space with low, dense, spreading plants that crowd weeds out through sheer competition. Creeping thyme along a path edge, moss in shaded corners, the same moss that traditional Japanese gardens are famous for, which asks for almost nothing and forms a living weed barrier on its own. Cost. A bag of mulch for an average flower bed runs $10 to $15 and covers the bed for a full year. Biggest mistake, applying mulch less than 2 inches deep. At that thickness, light still gets through in patches, and you'll get partial weed suppression instead of the real thing. 2 to 3 inches, every time, no exceptions. Timing, the detail most people get backwards. One more piece worth knowing, because it makes every method above noticeably more effective, and almost nobody talks about it. Boiling water and vinegar work best on a hot, dry, sunny afternoon. The plant is already under heat stress, its pores are wide open, and the internal water movement is fast, which means the damage from the treatment goes deeper and spreads faster through the plant than it would on a cool, overcast morning. Hand pulling works best in exactly the opposite conditions. Soft, wet soil, which means early morning, ideally the day after rain. Try pulling on dry, baked soil and you'll snap the stem off at the surface almost every time, leaving the root behind to regrow. Treat in the heat. Pull in the damp. Most people get these two completely backwards, which is a big part of why their results have been inconsistent. And one honest note on the worst cases. If you've hit something like bindweed or Japanese knotweed 3 separate times with boiling water and it keeps coming back stronger, that's not the method failing, that's the plant telling you how deep its root system actually runs. For those, the real fix is exhaustion. Cut or pull every single green shoot the moment it appears, every week, all season, so the plant never gets the chance to photosynthesize and refill its underground energy reserve. By the second season, it starts fading. By the third, it's usually gone for good. There's no shortcut for a root system that deep. Just consistency the plant can't outlast. Let's add up what a full weed-proofing project actually costs, start to finish, the Japanese way. Boiling water for existing weeds, free. Horticultural vinegar for the stubborn ones, a few dollars, lasts months. Mulch for an average flower bed, $10 to $15, lasts a year. Landscape fabric for a driveway edge or gravel path, $30 to $50, lasts a decade. Total one-time setup for an average yard, somewhere around $60 to $100. Compare that to what most households spend every single year on weed killer repeat treatments and the eventual cost of damaged plants from overspray. And the gap isn't close, and it widens every year you keep buying the bottle instead of fixing the actual cause. Here's the thing this video was actually about, underneath the kettle and the mulch and the fabric. This isn't really about weeds, it's about a way of thinking that shows up in everything the Japanese approach touches. Your home, your yard, anything that needs ongoing care. Prevent rather than fight. Maintain rather than rescue. A weed caught at 2 centimeters is a 1-second job. The same weed left a month is a 10-minute fight with a root that snaps in your hand. Left a whole season. It's the chemical problem sitting in your garage right now, the one that never actually solved anything. Most of what you've been sold about lawn and garden care has been shaped by companies whose entire business depends on you fighting the same battle every single year. The approach in this video is shaped by households who worked out, generations ago, that prevention is just cheaper, easier, and permanent in a way the bottle never will be. Your driveway doesn't need to be a battleground every spring. Your flower beds don't need a chemical treatment to stay tidy. They need a kettle, a roll of fabric, a bag of mulch, and the kind of small, regular attention a Japanese gardener would just call normal. If this helped, let me know down in the comments which weed has been the most stubborn for you this year. I read every single one, and it shapes what gets covered next. And if you want more of this, the prevention first approach applied to the rest of your yard, hit subscribe, because next week we're covering the Japanese method for keeping a lawn thick and green without a single bag of fertilizer. See you then.